afternoon, everyone.
Hey.
I'm going to call the August SMAC meeting to order. We don't have any excused absences. Mark will be here shortly. Send a note. You have the minutes from the June meeting, which will pause in July. And are there any corrections? Any comments to those minutes? May I have a motion to approve the June minutes? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposition? None at all. Public comment, I don't think we have anybody with public comment. So we'll move on to commissioner comments, and Barrett give some information about himself.
Sure. Hey, just a little background. I live on Crabtree Creek, more or less, in that watershed. And, the last 3 months, and kids go to school down there, but also work in the mitigation field for a company called Restoration Systems. Been there a long time to nutrient offset credits, which has a lot to do with stormwater and municipalities like Raleigh. Currently working with the city of Raleigh's wastewater department, developing a nutrient offset project on their property. And have done the Raleigh Rainwater Works program in the past. It's about 5 years. Work to Jason or, once a year, whatever. And, yeah, that's sort of the background of me. That suffices.
That's good. Thanks, Barrett. And for minutes purposes, Ann made the motion, Barrett seconded. So just wanted to get that on the audio record. Nicola, our planning commissioner, SMAC liaison comments.
Yeah, so there's not too many to report as far as kind of upcoming planning, things that they're considering, mainly because of the overlap of the different meetings and not too much in the way it works there. One kind of things that we mentioned or we discussed last time was the FEMA maps. So this actually went into effect. So the city council previously approved an ordinance to not have development or no new development on any vacant lots within the floodplain, the 100-year floodplain, and that was to take effect after, with the updated FEMA map. So that actually went into, they kind of delayed that a little bit and actually went into effect of July 17th or mid-July there. So definitely a plus side, at least they're making ordinances with updated data. So that's really exciting, and it's good that that's in the works.
Thanks, Nicola.
Yeah, sure.
Team updates, Wayne.
Yes, thank you. So we have 2 new stormwater team members that have joined us since the commission has met. One of them is with us here today, and I'd like to introduce Ariel Bushell, is our new communications analyst. And Ariel, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to say a few words about your background.
Yeah, very nice to meet all of you. Like Wayne said, I'm Ariel Bushell. I'm the new communications analyst, Stormwater Division. I have a background and experience in community engagement and outreach, previously with the Board of Elections, with Wake County and the State Board. And I also have some educational background as well in environmental science and natural resource management. So this was a great opportunity to be a part of, and I'm looking forward to all of the great projects that we do moving forward. Very nice to meet all of you.
Yeah, very glad to have you here, Ariel. And then the other new team member we have is Allison Harris. She has joined the Stormwater Development Inspections team. She's graduated from NC State with a degree in Environmental Technology Management and a minor in Environmental Toxicology. Comes to us from the private sector, where she has extensive background in stormwater control measures, inspections, construction maintenance, compliance, and she'll be inspecting private city development projects for sediment erosion control, repairing buffer, water supply, watershed, floodplain compliance. So we're very happy to have Allison as part of our team as well. 2 great hires here recently. If I may take this opportunity, sir, one question, clarification in terms of agenda moving forward. So the commissioner comments was a segment that we added while we were all virtual to help us get to know each other. And Mr. Jenkins was the last one. I believe everyone else has had the opportunity. So we could either go around again or just use that when we have new commissioners join up to the commission. Or take that segment out altogether, up to the commission, and you can think about it and let me know later, but just, that would be a question we have for the agenda moving forward.
Commissioners, y'all have comments, thoughts?
And members.
Yeah.
All right, we're good then? And we're, okay, yeah, new members, yeah, gotcha. Okay, that's right, that's perfect, yeah, perfect, that right.
Okay, excellent. And then for the high priority topics, there's several, but I believe the first one, Mr. Chair, I'll defer to you to give an update on that downtown South Creek stakeholders group update.
So in December 2020, part of the rezoning requirement for downtown South, which was proposed Walnut Creek, straddling Walnut Creek at Wilmington and 40, was a multi-million-dollar really community fund, community benefit agreement, grant matching, to pull together stakeholders group to look at 6 flood-prone areas downstream and how this grant matching fund can be used to help flooding in those areas. Certainly, I've not run across anything like this locally, and I think, Wayne, it's certainly unique, even from a national standpoint. And so that stakeholders group, which, as I said, the rezoning was in December 2020, finally came together 2 months ago and elected officers. I was elected treasurer for that group. And we'll be meeting later this month to look at the flood prone areas and really get the ball rolling about mitigation and grant matching. When I was talking to Wayne, one of the reasons I wanted to be a part of that group, because I was a part of the initial conversation in August of 2020 with community leaders coming together, really speaking on behalf of Stormwater, GSI, LID. And so I felt it makes sense from a community standpoint, not necessarily from my position as SMAC chair, but from a community standpoint, to be a part of that. I think moving forward, because this will be going on for at least 10 plus years, that perhaps we want to discuss the possibility of having that be something that SMAC has a permanent chair or permanent seat at this table for the downtown South Walnut Creek stakeholders group. We don't have to discuss it in this meeting, but moving forward, we'll talk about the possibility, just like Nicola is the SMAC liaison, the planning commission. We may have a liaison to the downtown South Walnut Creek stakeholders group. Any questions on that? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. One quick update. We are in the process of updating the stormwater management plan. You may recall, this is a plan that is put together every 5 years as part of our NPDES MS4 permit, and then annually we look at it and update it as appropriate and go through a public comment process. And I'll turn it over, Justin, would you like to say just a couple of words about where the process and where we are?
Yeah, sure. So today's official announcement that it's going out to public comment. It'll provide the opportunity for the public to provide comment all the way through the next commission meeting, with a comment period closing that next day. So just in case anyone hears about it at the next meeting, they'll be able to comment on the changes. They're not significant when compared to the last time we brought it forward. Just I'd like to, call it refined into what we've been doing. We've updated schedules and reporting metrics mostly, but nothing substantial. So look for that at the website, put the link in the notes, and there'll also be some social media pushes thanks to airmail advertising that and so.
Great, thank you, Justin. The next item on the high priority topics, you may recall the last commission meeting, we gave a presentation about some of the funding opportunities that we were seeking related to a variety of different types of projects. Shortly after that meeting, I think, and we mentioned ARPA is one of the opportunities, the American Rescue Plan Act is one of the funding opportunities we mentioned. Shortly after that meeting, staff was asked to make a presentation to City Council about priority projects that we would like to put forth specifically for council consideration as part of the ARPA funding that this was at the city's discretion. The city council had about 70-something million dollars. About 30 of that had already been allocated, much of it for affordable housing and other related issues. And they were looking to allocate additional funds. And so Stormwater made a presentation. We proposed 5 projects for a total value of $3 million. And council has approved our proposal. So we're very excited about that. That will allow us to accelerate some of the projects that we've had on our CIP, as well as a couple projects specifically targeted at disproportionately impacted communities. So the 5 projects that have been funded. One is the design of the Rhodes Lane improvements. I think you've heard mention of that. That is a community that is completely isolated when Rhodes Lane is flooded by Walnut Creek, which happens, maybe once or twice a week, sometimes pretty severely for a while, and that community is completely accessed. So this would be a study, alternatives analysis, and design of improvements to give alternate, more resilient access to that community during flooding events. The next one is a green stormwater infrastructure device at Lions Park, which is an older community center inside the Beltline in Northeast Raleigh. An older one did not have any stormwater controls whatsoever, so there's a lot of impervious area in that park that is not controlled. So this will allow us to retrofit that park with controls and green stormwater infrastructure. The next one is a Worthdail stream restoration project. This is a park that is in southeast Raleigh, tributary to Walnut Creek, has some pretty serious stream erosion, degradation, and this will fund the construction of that stream restoration project. And then 2 other projects. One is in partnership with the Office of Sustainability. You may have heard reference last year, they did a heat island study where they graphed during the summer across the city, had volunteers take heat measurements throughout the city and plotted those. And it was very obvious some very hot spots, parts of the city that had much higher temperatures, less tree coverage, a lot more asphalt and items, areas that contributed to additional heat there. So as part of the mitigation, the city was already moving forward with a cool pavement project, which will put a lighter coating on top of the streets. And then we're also going to help mitigate that with GSI, especially with trees that will provide tree canopy in those same targeted areas of the high heat island. So that was one of the projects that was funded. And then the last one, and this is related to the Rainwater Rewards project. One of the things we've talked about here is, as you know, Rainwater Rewards has a cost sharing component. So we're looking at piloting a more equitable way to implement Rainwater Rewards project. So we put in a fund to help fund 100% of Rainwater Rewards projects in disproportionately impacted communities. And that's going to be managed by Justin Harkiman, his group, who also managed the remainder of the R3 program. So we're very pleased, very excited about that additional funding that's coming our way.
Very good. I think the heat island study found 10 degrees difference.
There's some significant variability. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Somebody uses the greenways and the roadways for biking and stuff. Trees are great. Shade.
It's like 15 degrees.
It's amazing. Shade.
This feels 15 degrees.
It's a world difference.
Next item, equity. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, yes, sir.
Over the time, here from now, 6 months from now, we get kind of updates on some of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Be glad to give you updates on these projects and any other capital projects that you're interested in too. Yeah. That's good. Okay. Equity inclusion update. give you a brief update. We are, the next step of our process, we are negotiating a scope of work with a consultant to look at the equity framework that we had previously developed, and then help us look at how to operationalize and implement specific program policies related to equity inclusion. One of them is going to be any adjustments we make in our capital improvements prioritization process and how equity would be included there, as well as internal operational practices, the engagement practices, which we're already implementing a lot of those improvements as well. So Inga Kennedy at PEQ, she's out of Atlanta, is a sub-consultant to Raptellus, who's already on board. So that's who we're negotiating the scope with. The other item is we have, the city of Raleigh has received an invitation from the U.S. Water Alliance to join what's called their water equity team. And this is a national peer-to-peer network by invitation only of communities that look at equity issues, share pros and cons and stories of successes and maybe things, challenges that didn't go as well nationally related to improving water equity. And this is related to stormwater. Reverend Taylor and I had attended an urban flooding boot camp a couple of years ago that was sponsored by the U.S. Water Alliance. So urban flooding is an issue of theirs, but it's also drinking water and wastewater equity issues as well. So we've reached out to Raleigh Water, who manages the water and sewers work, and collaboratively are moving forward to try to get buy-in from the city manager's office to move forward and join that team. So we'll keep you all abreast of that as well. And then the last issue is the Raleigh Rainwater Rewards quarterly update. There was a memo and supporting documents in the attachments. Justin, anything you would like to say on that, or just taking questions if there are any?
Yes, sir. So taking any questions if there are any, another opportunity to introduce Stephen Jelpima. He has become a huge asset for the Raleigh River Rewards program over the last year. So it's been a year since he came to us from the private sector. And so those that are familiar with the program will start hearing his name more. And maybe here in the near future, we'll be presenting something from front of you folks. So if there are any questions with the annual review or the quarterly update, please let us know and Steve can answer or we're happy to try to get it for it.
Yeah, look forward to that. Thank you.
Let's remember, Taylor, one more quick item, and I believe I failed to mention one other, not a new member, but a promotion. I don't think I announced this last time. Did I have it? I did? Okay, all right. I want to make sure that acknowledged that this promotion, the water quality manager. Okay.
All right. That's it.
That's all. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. Justin?
I remember when that quarterly report was a single page, one page. Now it's turned into a very boring book. Seeing that there's no questions with the quarterly update, move right into our projects. I just want to kind of brief the commission. We are seeing increased costs across the board for all of our projects. What you typically do not see, except for when we check in quarterly, is the number of projects we approve at the staff level. So even that has dropped down slightly this last quarter. We approved 5 since the last time we met, and we are seeing increased costs. And so what that results in is more of your smaller projects hitting the threshold and being brought before you guys. And so one of those today is an example of that. I'm more than happy to jump right into them. Where do I point? There we go. Yep. All right, so the first project is a rain garden, backyard rain garden, capturing the entire footprint of their house. This is typically what we would see usually at the staff level. And I feel like this might be one of the ones that, the increase in cost, we're starting to see it maybe trickle into the commission level of review. It's located in the Crabtree Creek watershed, and they would be eligible for up to 75% reimbursement for their project cost. So took a couple photos to get a pulse on what the property looks like, capturing all the downspouts, and the rain garden will replace these planter beds on the side of the property. The topography works out great. Everything kind of flows to the back quarter. And so pretty straightforward from a rain garden, for a rain garden application. See the breakdown in costs. Pretty general, pretty comparable to what we see on other rain gardens. We have a lot of data points from rain gardens. We supported, I think, going on 90 of these over the last 12 years. And this, as you'll see in the next slide, all right, once we compare it to other rain gardens, it is spot on the mean, even with rising costs. It's right on the mean for pollutant removal. So another slide showing the breakdown, total cost, the 75% that the city would be reimbursing, and then the applicant's portion that they would be obligated to pay. This gets into the water quality considerations. The one thing we'll talk about a little bit in this one, but definitely in the next project, is the nitrogen removal cap. And so that was a recommendation from the commission last February 2021. And it was a way to help not only compare other projects, different types of projects to the project being reviewed, but it also created a new acceptable cost for an approved project. So in this case, the cap is $7,000 per pound of nitrogen removed. This is showing this project is half of what the cap is. And just the kind of a takeaway. So this number here is a function of total cost, the amount of impervious surface being treated, and the duration of the maintenance period. So what that really boils down to is a lot of impervious surface being treated, low cost, and long maintenance period means a great metric. They're the three things that combine. And so this one, half the cap, comparable metric to other projects, as we'll see here. That's a truncated comparison against other rain garden projects. It's dab in the middle. And you'll notice even for rain garden projects, which are usually slightly more cost effective than other project types, it's just slightly above the mean. So I just want to point that out. I wanted to somewhat walk through that nitrogen metric prior to moving on and see if y'all had any questions. I know we have some new members on the commission. Yes, sir.
Is that the landowner decides whether it's a 5 or 10-year maintenance term?
Yeah, good question. So that is going to be based on how much they're being reimbursed. Per the policy updates in 2018, I believe they've been in place. Any request greater than $5,000 requires a 10-year maintenance period. Anything below that $5,000 threshold is a 5-year maintenance period. And so what you might have are projects that are right there on the fence. Maybe they're eligible for $5,100 in reimbursement. They'll voluntarily cap their reimbursement below that mark, have a shorter maintenance period, have a streamlined process, and at the end of the day, it's mutually beneficial for schedules and our goals. So that is going to be set on per the policy. So anything the commission sees, generally speaking, will be a 10-year maintenance period. There is one or two exceptions, but not of value to go into detail with them now. Sure.
Yeah, and just a quick thing on the maintenance term. What happens if there is home ownership changes throughout that time? Is that linked to something in the contract?
So
Very specific, but I was just interested.
No, that's a good question. And we get that a lot. When me and Steven are standing in people's backyards, that's a question. What if I'm not living here in 5 years? So every legal agreement since around 2018 has a clause in there showing how folks can either transfer that project with maintenance responsibility to new owners, or they can pay the city back, reimburse the city their reimbursement proportional to how much time they have left in the program. And we have data points or examples of that playing out both ways. Most folks do transfer it. And, we were dealing with one just today where there was a question with the new owner, has the executed transfer agreement and, or finishing that maintenance. maintenance period. So there is a mechanism in place. That has not always been the case. So 2018 moving forward, we're in good shape in that regard. All right, moving on, general maintenance rain garden, same slide y'all have seen. If you were sitting in that chair since the beginning of presentations 90 times. So, and any questions about this project? Chair, would you like me to present each one?
Yeah,
All right.
good. Put them together.
All right, moving to the second one. So this project is an underground cistern, and staff had two big concerns with this project when submitted. The first was the high metric. We just went into detail about the metric. It is a very high metric compared to all previously approved projects across all project types. And that's the first concern staff did share with the applicant. The second was the fact it's a difficult site. There's a tight backyard. A lot of peripheral work will also need to be done, including a retaining wall to make this underground cistern fit in this footprint. So that was the feedback we provided back to the applicant. They, in turn, made some small revisions to the application and then did their due diligence in an attempt to get multiple bids beyond the three. And, you know, I'm presenting it as it's been submitted to staff, you know, with the numbers that have been provided by the applicant. I will say the designer has done well to mitigate a tough site to make a system work in the backyard. They're capturing all the runoff from their roof, rather large home, taking it along, burying it along the side of this house. Currently, the downspouts are already buried, pointing back there, and entering into a system, as you can see over here. Mark, but you can see over here, they're coming down two inflow pipes into two separate systems that are connected with an equalizer pipe, has an overflow with a passive drawdown where the topography allows for that to discharge in the right rear corner of the lot, as you can see there. So I will say it's a very well thought out project with a lot of attention to detail on the design side. Going on to the water quality metrics and considerations. As you'll see here, the cap was triggered on this one. The cap is once again $7,000 per pound of nitrogen removed. This is based on the applicant amount submitted, the total project cost submitted. This would trigger the cap. And so how that works is they submitted a total project cost of $40,000. You work backwards from $7,000 per pound of nitrogen removed to develop a new project acceptable cost based on the cap, which is $39,200. And then the applicant is eligible for 75% reimbursement of that new acceptable cost. And so after you go through that math exercise, and then you have your buddy check it and then his buddy check it. So you put it on the slide and you show that it's not 75% anymore, it's 73%. And that's, you know, these numbers will add up to this. Let me back up. No, these numbers will add up to that, the total amount. So trying to see if there's parting words with the cap. The cap is triggered for high cost projects that do not treat a lot of impervious surface, or we find that it also is triggered on really small scale projects where there is a bottleneck on where they can't get any cheaper on install, but they're not treating enough. And so probably by design, it is catching both ends of that spectrum. Here is the breakdown in cost for this application. And you will see, as mentioned, it has a metric that is one of the highest that the commission will have seen. It is, if you notice, for underground cisterns, this is just compared against underground cisterns. It is well above the average of underground systems and above that mean that I was talking about across the program as we were reviewing or as you were guys were reviewing the rain garden project. Yes, sir.
Are there rows below that or is that?
Not-
that's-
Not on this one. I only can use the truncated on above ground cisterns and rain gardens.
So it is the most.
It is the most, and even furthermore, if you were to even pull out or print off this long sheet and compare it against all of the projects, there is, I believe, 1 or 2 green roof projects that might be higher. But there are no other projects on this sheet have a higher metric.
What's the maintenance requirement on that? Isn't that a little bit more intense?
It is a little more intense. Our slide might simplify it.
Yeah.
But it may involve a submersible pump. It may involve maybe blowing out some piping that is not accessible ground. So they have a filtration set up. It's like which is kind of a low maintenance choke point. So where they can easily access their filtration box, for lack of a better word, at the inflow, and they can quickly get to that. But as long as that's maintained and their outlet pipes are maintained, it's not a whole lot different in maintenance. But yes, it is harder to get to, obviously, and it's underground. So very general, my answer was, I know, but it would be more complex than an above ground.
You mentioned some minor changes the applicant made or notes.
So the change, there was I think a 200 square foot addition. It was either addition or slight change in the amount of impervious being accepted or counted for treatment. And then there was a third bid. When this was prepared, we only had two estimates. And they had documentation showing they had reached out to 6 contractors in addition to those 2, trying to get multiple estimates. One of them came through last week. It was not the lowest, didn't change anything, but it did meet that requirement of having 3 estimates that the policy requires. So
Was the 7,000 cap set, $7,000 per unit? It shall contribute.
that cap was set in February, last February by the commission. There was a presentation on what a cap would look like, how it would retroactively, if you were to apply it retroactively to all projects, which projects would have been triggered, how many of those would have been capped. And the commission, I think we had a 6,000, 6,500, 7,000, 7,500. I know there was a couple options there, and the direction we were given was the 7,000 made the most sense. If that answers your question.
Does the applicant indicate what they plan to do with that cistern water? It's a lot of water to be captured.
That is, I want to say top of my head that it's irrigation. But I can answer that if you like. I want to say it's here. Let's see. Here we go. With the proposed water quality volume, once again, we require the water quality volume to be captured, the 1-inch rain event, and then the applicant can hold an equal amount on hand to use throughout the property. So they're saying the remaining gallons will be used for seasonal irrigation and landscaping. Yep. Thought there was a longer sentence there. That's it. So.
Do you all do any sort of analysis to make sure they can actually use that amount? Well, like Mark was saying, it looked like a small lot and that's a lot of things.
Yeah, very good point. And the staff and the commission has struggled with that in the past. So how we've managed to move beyond that and I think put it to rest was the passive drawdown concept, where we're interested in the first 1 inch of rain and we want to provide a benefit to the applicant. And so we provide a cistern that'll handle 2 inches of rain, but we want that passive drawdown right in the middle. So they can sit on that first inch and not use it all year. We always have that capacity recharging between rain events over 72 hours. And so at that point, it moved from more of an, or less of a, it moved from an amenity to a water quality device that's mutually beneficial. So that just generally speaking for cisterns.
So this is in a good spot size wise for the property and the drainage that would collect in a 1 year event or 1 inch event.
I'm sorry, that's that.
Is the size of the cistern appropriate?
Oh, yes, sir. The cistern is
Yeah.
appropriately sized for one. It's a pretty large house. They're capturing, they are capturing, over 3,000 square foot of runoff in a 1 inch rain event. So that you get to what we would support up to 2 times that size once. So that side of it does check out size. That's a short answer.
Having experienced as an underground cistern owner, you're gonna use up that water in the summer. You can burn it up pretty quickly, water blowing, so I'm not sure how big the yard is, but problem with winter that you don't have to use more, right, even out to walking high, so I said, you're gonna have a lot of water they gotta get rid of. Probably no use for it.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. In your opinion, can you compare like the other Fairview Road cistern that's the same size, that's almost $20,000 less, is like this new fancy design, like, is it worth that extra money?
It's a valid question. I would maybe look at maybe some of the dates. Some of them are older. I mean, that was 2016. Trying to think of the 5508 Newsview Road. That's relatively recent. Our standards really haven't changed. It should be pretty comparable. I would argue if we're gonna, the one factor that we don't change our standards, but what may change is the cost, outside cost. And so can't explain other than what that math exercise generated and how it compares against other projects. But we did voice that concern to the applicant along with the difficulty of the site. And I'm sure that plays into the cost.
I think the part of the concern is the top one was like it's a 2022 project that 2,400 gallons, and that's a really different metric when we're, and it's just 5 months ago, so or 6 months ago.
And it's 5 years? Which greatly impacts that
So,
rate.
yeah, that one it was done staff level, capped the reimbursement at 5. I think they were gonna move forward anyways, and they wanted a streamline process, single bid kind of thing. But it doesn't necessarily, so that would change the metric, but it doesn't change the overall cost. You're correct. It's that,
Yeah, that's a good one.
I feel like this is under the cap and you're not giving them the whole 75%. So it's expensive and it sounds like we're all concerned about having the city's dollar go as far as it can and not doing this too much. That's why I asked about 7,000 being the cap and maybe bringing that down, but it looks like a good project that fits the parameters right now or well planned and
I agree. I mean, it looks expensive and probably is. It's probably marginal project for what your return is on that. We've already set metric that if it meets this cap, then we'll go with it. So I was seeing we can hold it back and maybe we can revisit that cap or something down the road just for the benefits.
Any other comments, questions for Justin? All right, well, I will entertain a motion that we accept both proposals, the Medway and Fairview Road as presented.
To both projects.
All right, that's Mark. Make the motion. Second. Earl seconds. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposition? Okay, one opposition. Motion passes. And that's Commissioner Calavera, just for the minutes. Was an opposition.
Yeah, do we know? We don't know delineate. Unless you wanted it. Did you want that for the record, Katie?
I think we usually do. Okay, yeah, if it's, I think we usually do. Yeah.
Okay.
thank you all.
All right, thanks. So in our, we did not receive drainage assistance projects reviews in our information packet, so we did not have time to digest it. So I propose that we revisit this in September. With that being said, I actually had a question, without the package, but I just wanted to first get reactions to that, and also keeping in mind that we do have representatives from Bramblewood Drive here. We're just here to be present to answer questions. I want to hear from the commissioners. Do you agree with waiting until September when we will get Shas's packet and digest it instead of seeing it for the first time here? Or we can see it for the first time here and proceed?
I don't think it'd be appropriate to wait, but I've got one of the petitioners here. I would like to go ahead and presentation. So any questions we can get to them ones too.
Okay, you wanna just skip Pool Road and then go to Bramblewood?
Let's do that, although I do have a question about Pool Road.
Yes, sir.
I would say you have both of them lined up in order, Pool Road and.
Right.
Just do it. Just proceed.
Just proceed with both presentations. Okay.
My apologies to the commission. That was my oversight that the package was in the material, so my apologies.
So at this point, we'll receive the information, but we may not take action on it until we can deep with that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so hello, everybody. Chaz Webb, nice to see everybody again. An overview, we'll have the drainage systems and stormwater program overview. We'll cover the pending projects, which now you both are a little bit aware of. The project requests, funding overview, and then recommendations and questions. And I just want to go over just program objective and what the drainage systems program does. Stormwater management core division mission is preserve, protect life, support healthy natural resources, complement sustainable growth within the Raleigh community. And the drainage systems program absolutely strives to support that mission. So I know all this looks probably familiar, but just want to go over it again. In order to qualify, you must own property within the Raleigh city limits, have stormwater that conveys or receives public runoff, property or street, willing to donate a drainage easement, and pay the stormwater fee. Now, it does not cover nuisance flooding. Sometimes people have flood in their yards and they get mosquitoes. They don't like that. I don't like that personally too, but, and it doesn't cover, lot drainage. We have $1.25 million in annual funding this fiscal year. Just so you know, that's what's allotted. That's not necessarily what gets spent in the fiscal year. As the projects take time to design and construct, then that money eventually does get spent. These are the numbers I'll be presented to you are estimates. So with that $1.25 million, we're anticipating about 8 projects per year. And just keep in mind that these are small projects. These aren't larger CIP projects. They're generally smaller based projects with funding. So covering the pending projects, and I've got the top 15 here. We've got Pool Road and Bramblewood Drive that we're talking about today. And I've shown 15, but if I was to show all 101, it would take a telescope probably to see them. But these are just the top 15, so just keep them on your radar as we move through, because some of these we may see come through, and these are not on a first come first served basis. We may have projects that get added if they rank higher. So just some things to keep in mind. So the first project we'll talk about is Pool Road. That's a little bit east of downtown within the Beltline. And then next we have Bramblewood Drive. And that's a little bit north of the Beltline off of Freedom Road. So this is actually a little bit larger drainage systems project. We have 6 projects that are impacted by Pool Road. 1320, 1402, 1404, 1412, 1502, and 1504. A lot of community support for this one. I've experienced issues for quite a bit. And so I do want to point out that we have Pool Road Project Road ongoing, northwest upstream. And that's in the early design phases. So one of the things we want to do is work with that project, work with the designer, hopefully save some costs with design and construction. So just to kind of keep that in mind. And then we also have 911 East Davie Street, which was completed. The drainage basin area to this point downstream is 59 acres. So Pool Road 1320, Pool Road, we've got, you can see a stream encroaching within the 10 feet of an apartment building. It's eroding away. That's obviously a hazard. That's one of the drivers of this project is that erosion. But as we'll look and see, there's there's erosion going on. This is a blocked pipe. There's about 125 linear feet of pipe that is blocked. It's actually above ground. You'll see it in the next slide. And it's causing some erosion issues as well as some yard flooding. You can see here, this is the pipe that's above ground. We've got 1504 Pool Road that you can see is about 25 feet within the building. So again, another driver for this project. That's why you see this scoring higher than some of the others. And so the plan for this would, where it's encroaching on the building, where it's getting close to, we would wrap it. Where it's not encroaching on the buildings, do sloped vegetation. We would take out that pipe. Obviously, that pipe is in very poor condition, not really functioning as a pipe at all, and open channel that section. And so one of the things that I wanted to do is compare this project with another similar project. I picked the 1308 Pool Road, which is a little bit upstream, as I mentioned. And, when we score these projects, there's about 50 different criteria that we rank. We want to try and be as objective as possible. So within these 8 or 9 criteria, there are about 6 sub criteria. So that's where you get about the 50 criteria that we go in and rank. And what I can say is, generally speaking, the numbers match, which is good. They're not going to be perfect. They're not always going to be 100% consistent for as many items that we do rank. But I was, fairly encouraged by the scoring. And then the cost, we would do $30,000 for the engineering design cost, $200,000 for the construction, and the total project cost of $230,000. Yes, prices are going up. Taking that into account, but also take into account that we would, like to partner bundle, as we put it in our terms, with the design and the construction and the Pool Road, which was about 300 linear feet of project was $196,000. So you can see kind of fairly comparable costs there. So with that, I'll take questions, input, any next set.
Just to clarify, there was a project at 1308 that was 196,000, and we're starting at 1320. And another thing going downstream.
We're going downstream. Yes. Yes.
Do you have any other photos to sort of capture the situation?
These are the photos that I had. I can certainly, when we come back, provide a little bit more photos, but again, it's shown, just the erosion approach.
Is that budget for the one property then, or gonna help all of them?
All the properties, yes. There's not as much. Sorry about this.
It's in the Walnut Creek study area,
It's in the water. What do you mean?
like where what you're talking about, that long term.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not one of those 6 sites.
That building is really close. That's tricky.
So it's the 1308 project designed yet, or?
It's in early design phases right now, so we would want to like move that along. Again, not to pressure you guys, but just trying to.
Maybe some economies of scale,
Yeah.
saving money since that's not implemented yet. Mobilization and stuff, that.
You might go up a few slides, sorry, Chair. Yeah, go. Yeah, I'm sorry, go back to the,
Comparison.
we're looking, this is, you're saying 1504?
Yeah, I mentioned one, I didn't want to stretch out all the addresses, but.
Okay, because I had a question about the safety criticality score, which here is 50, but on the, one of your earlier slides, it was listed as 90. So you go back to the top. Right here.
Apologize, I must have missed.
So which one is correct?
It would probably be the 50 because of the length of the stream
Okay.
and the length of the impact, and that must have been an error on the Excel sheet.
So then my question then is around safety. Safety, everything is not hinged on safety, but if this is a 50 and there are several others that are higher, I guess why this one?
Well, so because of the length of the project, not all the homes have erosion that's threatening the structure, but it would be good to go in and fix the whole thing rather than just piecemeal it.
Okay.
So for that one house, the safety score might be much higher, but
If we were just looking at that, but then
they're actually gonna help.
we would, that's gonna solve part of the issue because downstream you have this pipe blockage.
Get Terrell, then
I had the same questions you had seen the 90. So is there any chance that if you fix that 90, it'll bump this one down to prioritization?
If we change
That,
that
the
50 to
Excel
90,
spreadsheet.
it would bump it up actually.
I mean, in the Excel spreadsheet where it's listed as 90.
Yes, it may bump it down, yes.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see where that would bring it in, right?
I'm sorry?
It would be interesting to see it.
Yeah, we can,
Okay.
we can make sure. we look at that.
And the question I had even before you presented, this is close to with the Z5721, which is the new proposed apartments that are a little bit north. I don't think that's the 1308 you mentioned here, is it?
No.
Okay. And that did not get a lot of community support. There's a lot of pushback there. So my question, how does this project, how will this project be impacted by the larger project that's upstream? Not even upstream, but if you go to the map, it's close to the intersection of, keep going up. I mean, yeah, well, I guess it's too tight. Yes, close to New Bern and sure. It is right here. It's a little bit above there. So I just wondered now, with that being said, you have three with this project. How can we integrate? Because the rezone request said that there is some flooding that will happen because of this development.
So one of the things we've heard and we've noticed is that a lot of these lots are exempt from stormwater regulations where if they're single-family lots, they have, I think this is down to R10, so they can go up to 65% impervious. And that's a lot of impervious that's coming in. So that's one of the things that they've noticed that the residents have said over time, it's gotten worse as development upstream continues to happen.
So when you come back in September, I certainly look at Z5721 and see the impact that will have. And the other thing, just for historical context, it's next to Battery Park, the Battery neighborhood, which was one of two neighborhoods, Rochester Heights, which is where my church is, and Battery were both rezoned in 1956 during segregation as places where Black people had to live. And so even though these projects don't impact Battery specifically, they are proximate to.
Right.
And so again, take into account all those things just from my standpoint, be helpful when we visit this in September.
I'll make a note. Thank you. Shall we move on to Bramblewood? So I would like to acknowledge that the property owners of 6204 Bramblewood are here. Sir, you're welcome to come up and speak and
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Thanks for inviting us to come today. It's been a long time coming. What I decided to do was, with just a few minutes that I have, was just to make a few highlight notes. If you can put the drainage, the picture up there, that would be really helpful. Yeah. Well, this is where all the whirlpool, this is probably here level 1 storm, by the thing. I'm getting maybe a level 2, but level 1 probably. Anyway, the storm drainage ditch at 6204 Bramblewood Drive has grown to approximately 20 feet over the years. And it's, this probably doesn't reflect that, but during level 2 storms, especially in something higher than that, you're talking 6 to 7 feet deep. And it's just a scary thing to even watch. That's probably just a level 1 there. But and my wife and I have talked about this in great detail, and we feel like that adding this bigger rock in greater quantities is not going to change anything when you get, 5 to 8 feet of water coming down here. I'm 72 years old now. I'm too old to get down that creek now and move them like I used to, move the rocks back to where they belong. And so we feel like that something needs to happen in there to impede the water a little bit. Because when the whirlpools start in this area right in here, it's just all it's doing is chewing up the banks, at that point. And if that water's coming down so fast from the street, from the neighborhood runoff, because people are running pipes in the street, and from, God forbid, we have a tropical storm, or like last year, I think it was last year, Michael just sat over us for days. That system creates real problems. So we've got to impede this water, in our opinion, somehow. Because it's coming so fast, and it's actually scary looking this is from the second floor. This picture's taken up there, and so Mr. Brown, I'm not sure if he's even around anymore. Mr. Brown and Mr. Hyatt came out to see us in December of 2018, in January of 2019. And Mr. Hyatt suggested that additional 30 feet roughly roughly from there to right about there, the drain pipe would probably, would definitely stop the erosion, some of the erosion on the side, because the water just churns. And it would help also gain us access to our property back here that now we do not have. Because now we have to go over to this yard to come over here into our, violate our neighbor's space, keep to get into that side of the yard. And it would also, he suggested, could be set up so it could aid and control the speed of the water as well. I said, I'm not an engineer, I don't know how that works, but he was very, very helpful. Depending on Charles now to help us out. We've been on the waiting list for probably a little over 2.5 years, and the drainage just gets larger every year depending on the tropical storms and hurricanes. You all know what that's like around here. There's also, which you can't see, right about here, a drainage pipe that was put in the 1980s sometime, is what we were told. And it's not really a drainage pipe, it's a sewer thing that you put vertically in the ground, because it's got stairs on one side of it. And I'm not sure how it got in there, but somebody put it in there in the 80s, we were told. And that is also one of the things that's impeding this water, because you can see it, you can see, if you saw the whole picture here, that the water is actually flowing over the sides of that thing. And they suggested that be removed. as well. The drainage just provides no access to the back of the property. We were requesting that some type of reclamation happens, and that's why we were asking about the pipe, in a way that could give us some kind of access to this part of our property back over here without going into our neighbor's yard. You know, every time we wanted to go over there and pick up pine cones or whatever. So, the funding for this project, I think you telling me earlier that it's there now that we've actually made it to this room. And we're really excited about that. But our concerns are mainly bigger rock, more quality rock means bigger rock for somebody to have to move. And I want to know, one of my questions would be from this committee, since I can't do it anymore, who's going to do that when the first tropical storm comes through or a hurricane comes through, and all these big riffraff rocks that are put in here end up right here? Who's going to come in and move, or we're going to have a dam set up there at that point? So, 'cause I know I can't do it. So, and if you were to see this all without any water in it, you're going to see that all back down through here, there's just piles of rocks, you know, everywhere. So, and I think I got everything. Did all the high points. Oh, we were just concerned about the excavation. I think that was mentioned earlier. About excavating it even more, because this is our main access to the backyard if we have to have any work done. You know, and the truck would have to come through here. We're concerned about more excavation, you know, limiting access even more than it already is. And also, you know, decreasing property values, because this deck is not that far. You don't, anybody know exactly how far it is, but 15 feet. And the deck's new, so I don't have to lose that. All right, I know I've got a limited amount of time, but if you want to ask me a question, I'm happy to answer them if I can.
You want to go into the plan review?
Yeah.
I'm looking at it on IMAX. I just want to, can you talk about things at the plan level versus that picture level? Maybe slightly easier to maybe figure something out. Where's the water coming from? I see the bottom, I see the 48-inch pipe that kind of happens in the property.
Most of that's coming from the street and the neighbor's runoff. Because all of our neighbors now are looking into the street with water drainage.
So when it's coming out of the 42-inch, it's spinning there.
Yep, in a severe storm.
Or at least it's down.
Yeah. That's when the whirlpool starts, when the level 2 type storms come and the tropical storms and these things. And the whirlpool is what's causing, I think, most of the erosion. You know, this started probably in a Fran, or maybe right before Fran.
Has the city done any, who has installed the riprap to this point?
You want to answer that?
I was sitting in front of the help. And they told me they could not find insurance help me with the creek. And, someone, they said they would come out and draw a picture of it, and it could be done and exactly what it needs to do, and how it had to be slanted, and how the rocks had to be put in, how that netting had to be put down. So I got somebody to come out and do that, and it was beautiful. And 2 weeks later, a tropical storm came over, and all those rocks piled up in the Great Pond. And it was slanted, constructed the way the city asked for it to be done, and I paid for it myself. And, all I know is that when the speed of that water is so massive, it's hard to describe it unless you watch the world over there. But it is so massive coming down that hill that anything in there with a car would be floating. My husband has been able to move those rocks out because they weigh only a certain amount. But if there was huge riprap in there, and it moved around like a carpet, there's no way we would be able to get down there and move it. And I just wonder if we call the city, would they come out and take care of it? Would they move it? Would they show up and do that? Because otherwise it would be, I always thought there was something that could be put in there I know there's different devices, that when water coming down at speed that can be put in that will slow the flow of the water, how great that flow of the water is. And I've always thought this property really needs it because my neighbor next door, the neighbor privilege this weekend, they've all put pipes in the big black things under the ground to protect their property, and the ones across the street that moved in, they put 2 long pipes all the way down to the curb. All of that water is going straight to our backyard. So, I mean, this is a continuation of people trying to protect their own property, which I understand, but it still ends up in our backyard. And we don't know what to do because you can't stop your neighbors from protecting their own property. But we need to have, we're hoping for some kind of device that can slow that water down.
It's
And
not a rock in the world's gonna stand up to that force.
nothing is, that water really is, during a tropical storm, it is like a tidal wave coming through there. It's a sight to see if you watch it.
First hurricane that comes through, if you guys want to come visit, welcome to it.
This journey, but anyway, I haven't ever had the city come out, yet. I've been in council for 30 years now. And I've been fighting this for 15 years. And I finally decided it wasn't really worth it to me to keep stressing over it unless I got something else, with it. Because it isn't something I don't think a person should have to at our age anyway. Financially, have to keep paying $2,000 out of your account to repair it constantly, because that's really what this problem takes. It takes somebody who can financially keep going $1,000 for freaking wash down the creek. So I'm not sure, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know what the answer is, but I do have to slowly speed that water down and, I've lost that. When I moved into that house, the creek was as big. Y'all looked at it. It was a tiny, beautiful little stream. And I thought, how beautiful. When Hurricane Rain came through, took out a lot. Since then, between neighbors and all kinds of pipes being put in, that has been like firemen just shooting a hose at the creek. So really, it just takes somebody with know how to come out and construct whatever it needs.
And Mr. Brown and Mr. Pyatt, first were the first ones that really gave us any hope.
And Chaz, you have some. We have some standards, I think. We realize.
Thank you, it's great. Thank you, by the way.
Thank you.
So this is a zoomed out view. See that the 2 properties that we're talking about are right in here. Drainage basin is 32 acres. We got 6401 Dresden Lane in the area, a little bit northeast, and that'll be bid out later this year. So I want to point out that not only did the score high because of the erosion encroachment into the residents, about 15 feet, but you can see we also have some sinkholes. And we looked at the pipe, we videoed the pipe. There's a number of offsets. It's not something that we can just go in and line. We would have to dig and replace. Understanding the concerns of the residents, but look to extend the pipe a little bit, perhaps dissipated flow, but understanding the goals of our program as well. So that is something that we have to take into account, that we need to go in and do what we can to stabilize the area while protecting the foundation of the structure. I've noted that the pipe here is about 100 linear feet, removed and replaced because we can't. There's no way that we could salvage that pipe. The offsets are like this. See, we're looking at the joints. Looking, with the stream erosion, install riprap and stabilize where possible. Perhaps add a little bit of pipe if we could. But again, that's something we want to look at the reports, the geotechnical report as well, engineer report. So we have the scoring. I didn't use the project nearby. What I did was I brought up 2324 Dollar Green Road, which was approved in June of 2021. Similar length run of pipe a little bit, outletting, offsets within the pipe. And again, sinkholes that were encroaching on the neighbor's yard and near to a house. And so, you can see again, these scores fairly comparable. And we would estimate that 15,000 for design engineering costs for this project. Construction costs about $90,000. Units cost was about 68,000. Again, that's fairly comparable. Understanding the fact that that was 2021 prices have gone up.
Is this a stream, like a regulated,
This is a blue line stream. Yes.
in the pipe you're gonna remove is on, not on their property? You say you're gonna remove the pipe?
So it's just on the property line. That's per IMAX. But we would have to get a survey to figure out where exactly that is.
Yeah, the original plat, the drainage easement goes right down the property line, so. And a sanitary, they're all in it. So.
But it's within the city's drainage easement area, is that?
Yes.
Is it an open easement or it's a private easement? It's like-
It's a private easement. We don't have, remember, part of the criteria for this program is you have to donate the easements. And that easement would be transferred over. We would, plat it around the infrastructure.
It sounds like you're gonna be riprap, which they weren't very confident in, and I guess you're gonna present this again later.
Yes.
It seems like the constraints you're dealing with is, it's a blue line stream, it's a buffer stream, so you can't really extend that pipe because you're in backward jurisdictional waters. So you have to go to some sort of a stabilization technique. It's a matter of what's adequate to withstand, the forces coming out of there. But at the same time, they had a concern about who's going to maintain that. If it's drainage assistance, it's going to get public drainage easement, and the city's responsible for maintaining it after that. So that it takes their responsibility in making sure the design is adequate.
Right.
It's a little odd, there's no vegetation here. Really in that,
That's, yes, right there in that.
yeah, so. Yeah, the riprap doesn't work.
Were any alternatives explored, like farther uphill to like address the water before it becomes such a huge problem there?
It's tough. That's a good question. Good observation. Slow the water down. Have to put in a detention system likely. It's not, for the cost. We've had situations like that in the past where we've bought out properties and we look to put in some sort of detention system. But I think for the cost, it's not worth looking at buying out a property.
But, and I can't tell like the scale of the road, but is there room on the road to do like some green street treatment and?
It would be very difficult. You see there's a water line, there's a sewer line crossing. A lot of utility conflicts, there's probably gas in there.
What's the downstream look like? Are you just gonna push it down to the neighbor, the erosion?
No, we would look to dissipate the flow, so we would not increase the erosion downstream.
Okay, so their backyards are gonna flood a little more.
So remember, our key focus is making sure we stabilize the area and preserve the foundation.
Would you just, what, I mean, if you're not working on stream, I mean, this is all started on Primo Road, all development on the Primo Road is fully paved, so it. How would you just fit in the flow if you just put it, I'm just trying to figure out. Yeah, probably, I mean, that makes sense to replace the pipe, because if that's not, it's not working. I understand it, we're just trying to figure out the next step and just get that.
Yeah, I mean, there's different flow dissipation options. I haven't looked specifically to see what we would do, but I would assume, because you're right, we don't want to make the downstream areas worse, and that is one of our goals.
Is that 40 inch? I mean, it seems like it's a block. I don't know. It's 42. No, but the 40, there's some kind of, it goes back into a pipe at the property line.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That's,
Weirdest thing.
that's that,
Is that
that's,
protecting
that's
the
that,
sewer?
manhole or
Oh, good.
the little thing that was,
But is that slowing something down that then is creating, more?
that's,
pollution on the property? Is that actually as a dam or a obstruction of the, trying to figure that out?
As you said, it flows around.
yeah, it flows around.
So you could have one of the drainage pipe. So you can have one around it.
Yeah, right, okay.
That's-
Sounds like we have work cut out.
Yeah, good luck.
But next meeting.
Yeah, we'll bring this back into.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, thank you,
Yeah.
Chaz, and we'll see you. We'll see you.
I'll see you in about 2 minutes.
That's right. We'll see you. All right. Thank you. Okay, so now we're a little bit behind and Chaz is still up because we're policy.
All right. Hello again. Still Chaz. And so we have we have two policies that we're going to present to you. We have an amended drainage systems policy and a proposed stream stabilization policy. You may recall that last year we talked about some of the stream stabilization program that we were working on. So we're going to overview, we're going to have program objectives. We're going to go through the drainage systems policy and questions, and of course you can ask me questions at any time. Talk about the stream stabilization policy and then more questions. So I'll just briefly run through this now that you've seen this already, but our stormwater management core division preserve, protect life, support healthy natural resources, and complement sustainable growth in the Raleigh community. And the drainage systems program looks to support that, to assist in reducing flood hazard from urban stormwater runoff, and to help protect and improve water quality in local streams and other receiving waters. Now, the existing drainage systems policy was approved in SMAC and council in 2016. And it was to assist the private property owners that had flooding to severe erosion issues from waters that receive and convey public runoff. Again, the projects are typically small scale, as we've seen so far, as compared to other stormwater CFP projects. So a majority of the policy from the current policy that proposed remains unchanged. Most of the sections do include changes though, and we will start with section 2. The previous policy included 4 definitions. We've added 7 definitions now for a total of 11: permanent drainage easement, temporary construction easement, rights of entry, riparian buffer, intermittent stream, perennial stream, and conservation easement. And the definitions that remain the same were severe erosion, structural flooding, street flooding, and the city. And adding those definitions help to add a little bit clarity as it's defined more elements within the policy. So one of the things that I wanted to point out that has happened in section 3 is we've had situations where people have come in and they have requested assistance, and there's no impervious surface on that property. And you may recall you have to pay a stormwater fee to be eligible for the drainage systems program. And if you don't have any impervious, 400 square feet, then you're not paying a stormwater fee, and therefore you're technically not eligible. So we wanted to find some sort of balance where if you have an HOA lot that, is it commonly on an HOA lot, and that is one of the properties in question, that no more than 10% of those properties that contribute to that lot are in arrears of their stormwater fee. And The reason for that was, if you had 30 lots, you're always gonna have that one, that doesn't die. So we felt like 10%, was a good number. This change will allow properties in certain situations without impervious against be eligible. What hasn't changed is the project must receive, convey, public runoff and be in city limits of Raleigh. That we want to absolutely keep the same. Section 3 clarifies association with developments. This current policy states the program is not for new development, construction or redevelopment, and we felt that was a little bit vague. So we've added the language properties either subject to new development plans with associated site planning review, SPR, or mass grading plans shall not be eligible for the drainage systems program until after 1 year of issuance of a certificate of occupancy for a development or redevelopment with an SPR plan or 1 year after a mass grading plan has been stabilized, whichever shall occur first. And if you're not familiar with SPR plans, those are typically larger subdivision plans. Same thing with mass grading. To get a mass grading plan, you have to be disturbing at least 12,000 square feet. So we wanted to, have 1 year, typically, warranty period is 1 year. So set some sort of standard in the file. Section 4 did not have changes. It's about the application of the stormwater drainage system policy, participation in drainage systems project by the city and its agents contractor shall be limited to the extent of city funds, resources that are available to the city. And that's important, making sure that we clarify that we have to have the funds, and no work shall be performed until approved by council and you guys, commission, stormwater commission, eventually council. Section 5 discusses the easements and the applicability. Language has been added to clarify when the easement must be donated upon successful completion of a stormwater repair project and upon establishment of a city of Raleigh permanent drainage easement. Over these repairs, certain restrictions will apply. Now, why we've changed that language is because, as we've talked about with the previous drainage systems projects that came through today, that you have to donate an easement first before construction can begin. So if we have the language of upon successful completion of a stormwater repair project, well, that does open the door for a little bit. So we changed that language to upon dedication of a permanent drainage easement to the city associated with a particular drainage system project, certain restrictions. And then section 5 of the policy, we've changed the language to match that of the Unified Development Ordinance. Under the current policy, certain encroachments like fences or structures, they would have to go to the stormwater manager for approval. So say you wanted to put a fence in a drainage easement, that was a drainage systems project, it would go through the stormwater director. Now say, Joe wants to put in a fence in his private property up near Falls of Noose. And he's got a private drainage easement. Well, that has to go through the engineering services. So we wanted to change that language to make it consistent. So I'll pause for any questions.
Do you want to go back to the first, I think it's section 3.
Sure.
So I think that's towards the beginning.
Yeah.
All right, I think maybe it was the very first one that you had touched on.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, so it's not the HOA. So if the home is not in an HOA and doesn't have any impervious surface, are there cases like that? Because we're kind of branching out to include, and there's just some way to kind of tackle that lack of imperviousness. Are there any kind of expansions for homes that are not in an HOA?
Well, I want to make sure I understand, because if it was a home, it would have likely the 400 square feet of impervious.
Oh, so, yeah, so if there's anything else in there, are there any gaps that we're missing, I guess? because this was just with an HOA, are there any other gaps that we're missing, just like, that are excluded, or there kind of scenarios like that?
I mean, I guess technically there are some common lots that by legal definition are HOA. I would go.
Okay, but that's, remember, yeah, I think when I was initially going, when you're initially going through that, I was, seeing those kind of gaps, I know just was walking out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is this like a common area of the HOA, of the property that you're talking about that doesn't have any impervious?
Yeah, like if you, say, I'll use one of the examples we looked at, that it's, it's just a common area that residents can go to enjoy a screening, lake, what have you.
And you, for the next slide, you were having sort of new development properties that have to be in place for a year or so before you would assist them.
Right.
Don't you think they shouldn't have any problems for a year or so if they were just permitted as a,
I think I would stretch that out.
We've started
I would
that.
stretch out. I mean,
That opens the door to doing things, and I don't know that you may not, if unintended consequences, maybe come back around after a year or something like, and apply for something. I know it's kind of a process, it's going through the matrix, but I don't see that one waiting. I don't know.
And Rhodes had a little hard point on that because we don't regulate a lot of the drainage on private lots, and so they can get in something that's totally inadequate.
yeah,
Walk away and leave the city responsible for fixing it.
yeah, like whoever's developing subdivision doesn't care because they're gonna sell it before it's a problem.
But 1 year is kind of arbitrary and kind of, it's a mark we may not want.
That's based on a warranty period, what you're figuring.
Yeah, warranty period. We've looked at that number a little bit, and we felt like a year was a good balance. But again, we're open, to the commission and what they feel is appropriate.
What other times you look at, so when you was a balance, so you look at no time or 5 years, 3 years?
Well, technically under the existing policy, it just says not associated with. So, I mean, someone could make a case that a month, the project's been closed out.
Okay.
I have a separate question, so. if
Yeah,
you're-
go ahead. That's it.
I want to go back to the HOA thing. I assume that the fact that someone is in arrears is not public record. And so is it spelled out anywhere that the HOA can't figure out what 10% of people are in arrears? I picture an HOA bullying people into paying their stormwater fee so that they can qualify. Is there anything that protects people's privacy that they're in arrears?
I'm not sure about the billing aspect of, I know that, everything that we do is essentially public record, but understanding the privacy of people. I wouldn't want someone to be in a situation where they're bullied, but I do understand that it's valid.
Looking through this earlier, I saw there's some language about the drainage systems projects happen to be city standards. And I'm wondering if that's could be problematic, painting ourselves in the corner where we might be able to build something that, for example, our requirements maybe has to carry a 10-year storm. And for design reasons, making that or achieving that is difficult. Or we might be able to put in something that makes a 5-year storm or an 8-year storm and improves the situation. Do we want to pin ourselves into that it has to meet city standards, current city standards? And I know there's been times we look at projects that we can't quite meet the city standards, so we put in something a little bit less adequate, but demonstrating improves the situation. I just get worried when we have shall or must to in the language and stuff. It's our call and somebody else is not making this. And the goal is to meet the city standards, but it doesn't have to be, must meet city standards.
Yeah, I think that is a valid point. I think part of what we're doing here in this aspect is to try and meet the standards of the development community as well and make it consistent with that. So that was one of the objectives as well.
I think it's a goal, but I don't think it should be a must or a shall kind of thing.
So like you said, something like the goal would be to meet certain city standards whenever possible, or something like that. Certainly the intent, and because the city then would be taking over maintenance responsibility for that infrastructure from that point forward, it would be in our best interest to meet city standards whenever possible. But I think we could change the language of instead of must, the goal would be to, or something like that.
You know, I'm thinking situations where code requires you have to pass a 25-year storm on the road. And maybe you can only get a, 10-year storm on the road, but if it gets flooded every year, it's still a whole lot better than doing.
Not split too many hairs here, and I feel like today I'm in my very idealistic bubble, but like that could also work the other way. It's like, what if just the opportunity came up for us to do something that really exceeded the city standards? Right, then instead of like having it holding us back to do, the city's fantastic standards, we're like, what if an opportunity presented itself to exceed it, and we would have to pull it back just because it said we must meet these standards. Just a
Sounds
language thing.
Yeah. Plains language are covered, both ends.
So when you say meet or exceed, what possible was the intent to do? But Chad, what you want from us is to approve the text changes feedback.
No, just feedback at this point. Don't want to rush you. Understand that this is a significant change for DI and then stream stabilization.
That's the overall feedback. I think you guys did a good job of looking at a lot of stuff and cleaning it up and working out the nuances.
We had a great team look at this. So we also ran it through legal. Had legal counsel with the city attorney's office review this as well. So we've had quite a number of options.
Anything else? Check.
We have the stream stabilization.
I thought Ben. Okay, you're right.
So, I understand we're taking time here a little bit. So, stream stabilization program objective. Now, this is for the new policy. You've seen this. The stream stabilization policy is needed to address erosion. I'm going to go through and point out why we need this. Because we've had projects that wouldn't score well under DI, but could score well under stream stabilization. And you've seen, this one looks familiar, I hope. That would score well under DI. We've got this one on Sawmill, but that wouldn't score well under DI because it's not, you can see it's in wooded areas. And so that would be a good candidate for stream stabilization, a lot of nutrient reduction. So that's what we're looking at. The definitions are generally the same. We took out street flooding and structural flooding because those would not be applicable to stream stabilization. HOA, same thing. So that's the same idea. We'll look at, privacy and all that. We want to establish a minimum of 20-foot stream slab riparian buffer, and that will be in a conservation easements. We've had some back and forth in previous MAC meetings about, the buffer width, the buffer length. And again, the same idea about the association with development or redevelopment. That language is very similar. Section 4, now it's the same language as drainage systems, participation in stream stabilization project by the city, to which city funds are available. And again, we'll look at that as well. And section 5 discusses the applicability. Again, this is very similar. We added language for the conservation easements and changed the language to match that of the unified development.
Is this to address more places like the HOA where there's less impervious going on, or is it to address city property that, project? I mean, I'm just trying to explain it a little more.
Yeah, it could be used for city park property, like for example, parks property, where you don't have a whole lot of permanent sewer structures in the area.
Okay.
Or one of the things we're looking at too is partnering with Raleigh Water and trying to find areas because, a lot of sewers are near creeks and they're becoming more exposed.
So that'd be a bit.
Two comments, one the same thing about meeting city standards and design, it's a little room there. And also this one, it's got some language about, go back to slide, start talking about easements, utility easements. Stream side area buffer shall not be subject to utility easements. I'm not sure what that means. Over the years, I know we ran into situations where either there was already a sewer easement there or potential for where sewer line had to go because there was no room anywhere else to put it. It has to follow a grade situation. And so again, I don't want us to paint ourselves in the corner where we might have a good project, but because it may be subject to utilities, we can't do it.
But yeah, that's to say, just be careful with your conservation easement language. That's the issue that we've run across with Raleigh Water and Crabtree Creek, where they just replaced the sewer line, which runs along the green light, parallel to the creek, and have erosion problems and the buffer overlapping hesitancy to put a riparian buffer easement in the sewer line footprint, essentially, or a future footprint. So just be careful about that conservation.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah, 30 foot, I think so. Stream side, too.
Yeah, where's the 20 foot? I don't want to rehash stuff, but.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
question because we, 30 foot being the zone one.
Right.
We've thought about that, but not everybody has that ability to give 30 feet. So that was a number that we've gone back and forth on.
But if we're repairing a stream, it's a blue line stream, and it would have, would it not? But it's just there, not all.
You'd have to have like existing development or something in the footprint already, and so they might be hesitant to turn it wrong to a forested area, but I personally would argue that they should do it for 50 feet and plant trees instead of grass if they're having drainage problems in their yard anyway, and erosion problems.
This is limited, so I mean, it's one of those situations where if we can get 20 feet, great, but we don't want to put a lot of project just because we can't get a full 30 feet or 50 feet or
We're
whatever.
not trying to disqualify people with that.
I think if it's less than 20 feet, it would probably start qualifying into the V8 project because it.
Yeah, that's
Right, but it wouldn't be a stream stabilization as a thought.
Good point, yeah.
All right, thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
All right, Ben.
You're gonna become an environmental attorney?
I think over the years I had to get stuff from utilities.
All right, thank you. This is just, an update, basically, to a couple items. One item, the news ordinance changes, you guys actually voted on in January, but the state has kind of pushed back our timeline on that, so I want to give you guys an update, kind of where that is. And for new members, we would go through kind of what those changes were as slowly as quickly as possible. And then also an update to the stormwater design manual updated timeline as well. So, like I said, you guys saw this in January. The state updated their NUS model ordinance for all the communities in the Neuse River Basin that are adhering to the nutrient standards, and it reflects the 1999 edition, which is good. 22 years old, is probably a little old for model ordinance. So they did approve that in spring of 2021, and it was based on the enabling law for the Neuse rules, and it's going to apply to all the communities within the Neuse River Basin to adopt, and that's kind of the timeline that we're on now. The first part of this is stuff you've seen in January where it gets, maybe not. Here's where it gets kind of squarely in the July 2022 area. NCDEQ staff in January of 2022 approved the city's plan to move forward. And because of some turnover on their side and some scheduling with the EMC issues, the EMC full commission did not hear it until July of 2022. And at that meeting, it was brought up that we defer action until their September meeting because a few of the commissioners were worried that some in the industry didn't get to review all of the affected local programs, plans for complying with the lease model ordinance. So essentially in July, NCDEQ was asking for approval for 12 local programs to kind of move forward with adopting the lease model ordinance. And because of a little more review time, we kind of had to defer until September. So I don't have a firm date as to when these will go effective, because if they meet in September and decide not to pass it in their September meeting, we'll kind of push back again, because what we're waiting on is we have 6 months after the EMC approves us to move forward to kind of adopt and make it part of our UDO. So assuming they're going to approve it in September of 2022, meaning we would have till March of 2023 to adopt and officially to our UDO. And just to kind of give you an overview of what's not changing, just to be sure we kind of know where we are. The rate of runoff control is not changing. So our standard 2 and 10-year storm, we're all new impervious and new development. The increased runoff control upstream obstructed flooding cases, which is all the way up to the 100-year storm, that's staying in place. Stormwater retention during construction for areas that are disturbing more than 5 acres at a time, that's staying in place. And all the maintenance stuff that's in our current UDO now, and also the smaller site that had the maximum impervious percentages, that's not changing at all. So did add some definitions to the stormwater section that we probably needed. The new state term for impervious area is built upon area, which maybe I didn't do a good enough job of selling this back in January, but welcome to the world of BUA instead of impervious area. So that's the term they're going with and move forward. And they also added some exemptions, some smaller developments on large single family lots. So if you have a single family lot that's over an acre, but it's only doing a very small footprint of 5% or less, they would be exempt from even our maximum impervious area. The amount of times we've seen that is zeros about a year, so I don't think we're gonna catch a lot here with that one. Curiously enough, the exemption states that if you're more than 5%, then you'll be subject to the standard stormwater rules, not just our maximum impervious areas. And that may catch a few people. And also added some exemption language for agriculture that was not in our UDO, which we sort of did as well. So, but there are major changes to kind of how nutrients are treated, how that's calculated, and kind of how that moves forward. So basically, the nutrient loading rate leaving a site is still going to be 3.6 pounds per acre per year. And that's been the same since 1999 when the new rules were first changed. So that's the target for the entire basin is kind of hit that 3.6 pounds per acre per year. Currently, commercial sites can reduce, and I'm not expecting you to know exactly what these numbers mean, I'm just giving you them for scale. Commercial sites can reduce their loading rate to 10 pounds per acre per year with on-site controls and kind of buy down with offset mitigation credits from there. And residentials they need to reduce to 6 pounds per acre per year, and then they can use some offsite mitigation credits to apply to 3.6. Well, that's sort of going away with the new ordinance. Same target loading rate at the end. But if you're more than 20% built upon area, or the UA, you will have to have a primary stormwater control measure on site to even utilize any sort of offsite mitigation buyout. So we do get some sites that are less dense, around the 40% area that can comply with buy down only, depending on if you're in commercial areas or stuff like that, but that's going to go up. Because what the 24% translates to, and one of my plan reviewers figured this out for me this week, was that's about that 6 pounds per acre per year number. So essentially, if you're above that 6 pounds per acre per year number,
to kind of compare it to the old standard or the current standard, then you will have to put some sort of stormwater control device in, and you won't be able to just use offsite mitigation directs or pipe. It's about referring to. And then-
23% of the Beltline area sites.
Correct, well, we'll see, I doubt it, but. The other big change, which is gonna affect staff and applicants, is that all sites must use a state-approved calculation tool, which is being used currently in our waterside watersheds. It's called the SNAP tool. I apologize, I don't know what SNAP stands for, I should, I'll figure that out, I know you do.
Stormwater independent monsters.
Oh, there you go. Perfect, thank you. So the SNAP tool, but it's being, thank you so much. So- That's right, yeah. Matt was in charge of it. So anyway, right now, our applicants and staff, we're using in our Falls Lake watershed and also in Swift Creek, we're using this tool to kind of calculate compliance and neutralizing. Well, that'll be for the whole city. And so there are some changes being made to that tool as well. And I'll get into some of that in a second. Big change for city projects, linear public projects are now able to use offsite mitigation credits and not necessarily having to build on-site SCMs. Because if you've ever seen a road project or designed a road project or driven on a road, there's not much space there. And so that was always a struggle with them trying to find space to put an SCM with a road project. But now they can use bank credits, be it from a private mitigation bank or potentially from a public mitigation bank to comply with the neutral rules now. And any non-linear public projects, like say fire stations, parks, things like that, those will still be subject to the same rules that private development will. So it only counts for linear public projects like roadways and sidewalk projects. But this is similar to how NCDOT is treated for their linear projects currently. So that's sort of what the local programs went to the state for, kind of ask for the same treatment that NCDOT is doing. Possible issues that we see, like I mentioned about the stormwater nitrogen and phosphorus tool, is the new version is not quite ready. And what we've been told is that it will be ready around October of 2022. In fact, depending on how the EMC meeting went in July, I was hoping to speak to the EMC about the fact that it was not ready, and I'm worried about going effective 6 months after July, the tool is not ready, but that got pushed back, so we'll see how that goes. So we will have to get staff and our private applicants need to be trained with that tool. If we have that March deadline to kind of go effective with, we would have from October to March to kind of get staff trained up and also the design community trained up. I'm hoping to lean on some state resources on that as well, but if not, we'll have to kind of do our own outreach and kind of figure that out. So we do have our plan review supervisor, Shai Hoyt, is actually on the committee that's going through the changes that are on the SNAP tool. So that's pretty good news. So we kind of have some insider knowledge there. While the SNAP tool, like results and inputs are a lot more detailed, like you're breaking it down, like currently, if you've done any projects in Raleigh, we literally just have impervious, landscaped open space and unmanaged open space. Well, there'll be a whole bunch of new categories now for impervious area. You'll have a designation different for roofs, for sidewalks, for roads, or anything like that, and also for some of the landscape, depending on what you're using it for. Going through, once again, one of my plan reviewers was giant on the spot this week. He took a few sites kind of through the old SNAP tool. So he was using the old, like watershed SNAP tool. And while like the results were more detailed, the loading rates fell out similar. I mean, it wasn't different, but it wasn't like a huge hit either way. Like the development community is not getting away with a lot more, but we're not gutting them on the other side as far as making like the loading rate skyrocket. But that was very small sample.
So my part of the breakdown is literally to update. So are y'all setting another one next year, another version? Okay, because it's supposed to be like update the 30th part of that and the loading and volume and stuff.
Yeah, so we're just dependent on what the state's not publishing as their version SNAP tool.
Okay.
Yes, we're not making our own on that. I was just saying that our planning supervisor is currently on the state technical support committee for that right now, so.
Okay.
And then the new, I put in quotes, stormwater control measure requirement for sites that are above 3% BUA might be a bit of a surprise to the development community. And I think that might have been what drove their want for a deferment in July, but I'm cynical, obviously, maybe not. So, but we'll see how that kind of flushes out. So as far as next steps for the commission, you guys have already approved the changes that were made. Their fees really haven't changed because of the deferment or anything. So you guys have already approved that, and it's kind of, for lack of a better term, locked and ready to go to city council as soon as the EMC approves us to move forward, because we don't want to be waiting until Christmas and everybody takes holidays off, things like that, to kind of get this done. So hoping to, as soon as the EMC approves it, if they approve it on September 8th, I'd love to be on the council agenda for the second meeting in September. That's how I'm trying to time it out right now, to kind of take your approval to them. And if that request for change is approved by council, the ordinance change language would then be taken to the planning commission for approval. And based on their deliberations, they would then send it back to the city council to hold a public hearing at a specified date to figure out then. But assuming everything goes well at the September 2022 EMC meeting, the change would go effect March 2023. So that's kind of what we're hanging our hat on.
That's the earliest it would go into effect.
Correct. Yes.
You may have talked to Zach about this, but given that one of your bullets was community might be surprised, you're going to take this to them with
We are.
maybe the new snap tool and some other things.
So we had talked to them about this last spring, kind of assuming it would be September.
Yeah.
Because because in 2021, that's when we were told is when it would have to be effective. So we were going to, as soon as the MC approved, we made the same deal with them that we would bring something more substantial back for them to talk about. But yeah, they had been warned about it, but. So similar, but different stormwater design manual update. Where we are with that, the use model ordinance getting pushed back wasn't kind to that schedule either, because staff is of the opinion that we don't want to send these two items together because I don't want to get confused. As I was telling Wayne, anyone that'll listen, the use model ordinance stuff is kind of, we don't really have a choice on them. Not to force anybody's hand here, but the state's kind of dictating that that's what we're going to do. The design manual, we do have a choice on. I mean, we think there's some good choices that are to be had here, but that's a little bit different. So as much as I'd like to get the design manual approved as is and say it's all the state's fault, I don't think I can do that. So we wanted to separate it to avoid confusion on that. And also the staffing issues that we've had in the plan review the past year and a half is kind of delayed meeting like on that too. So what we're looking at is that targeting spring, summer of next year after the new model ordinance is approved, assuming it's that March 2023 date, we would go with the design manual at some point after that. So the last version that the public saw of the stormwater design manual was their second draft, and that was last fall. So what we're doing now is compiling and publishing on our website the first and second draft public comments with the staff responses attached. And then we're going to prepare a final draft for informal public comment. And I'm saying informal because it's not the formal public comment associated with the text change. That'll be coming. It'll just be out for public comment. And my plan is to mirror what Justin did and present to you guys as we kick off the last round of informal public comment. Sorry, you guys being smile. I shouldn't refer to you that way. I guess it's late. So that's kind of, so that would be in the winter time frame, either before New Year's or after. But definitely before the March date, because I kind of want to get it seen by the public, by you all before that. And so kind of the commission next steps would be to just receive that staff final draft presentation and then to review the final draft and those comments as well. And I don't want to have you guys rush or anything like that. It's going to be some changes. And then after that, the commission would request that ordinance change to the city council for design manual update. Because it is just like a UDO text change. We do have to kind of go through that same process for the design manual update. Possible issues, like I said, if there's further delays to the new model approval, that would impact timing. Like I said, I want these items to be separate to limit confusion on the council side and probably on the staff side. Some of that too. Council timing could also depend on election timing. I don't think they can have runoffs anymore, but just general election year stuff is interesting. There's less flavor for controversy leading up to an election. So anything I think the council would probably be either with the new council kind of moving forward with January. And then if we get just brand new out of left field comments from the public on our final draft, and that could possibly make us go back. But we've been working fairly closely with the development community on the first two drafts, so I'm not anticipating something just to hit me out of the blue. And all the private citizen comment that I've had, or in private resident comment I've had, have been fairly in favor of the stuff that's been made, so. Question was either one of those. Hate to confuse the issue by combining it here, but figured it was the best way to kind of do it for right now. But you will be seeing kind of a separate stormwater design manual update item for more like review and going over the comments as well. Yeah.
I had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
That manual just in general gives more optionality for stormwater.
Yeah, so two things we were doing with the design manual, was we're updating to get to the present at least with what is the, SCM standards or things like that. And then also, decently heavy on GSI, and kind of was obviously so we have now as far as that flexibility. There is, where the biggest changes are gonna lie is going to be in the chapter going towards small site infill development, because we're looking for outlet of stormwater to be kind of handled better than it is today with our current manual practice.
Okay, that goes to one of my other questions. What is the sort of size exemption lots where you don't have to do all of this stuff?
So right now, the way we've kind of covered it is we have, when we first adopted the neutrals, most small sites are affordable because of infill lots, pretty much exempted from all stormwater rules.
What size is that? Is that a size?
Depending on if you're commercial, it's like less than half an acre.
Mhm.
And if you're residential, it's like if you're subdivision, it's less than an acre, or you're just an existing single family lot before the new rules went into effect, which is at 99 days, I think you were platted before that. You were pretty much exempted from any stormwater. And then in 2016, we went through and, fairly lengthy deliberation at the commission level and council level, and put maximum impervious area limits on those lots that were exempted by the state. Because in 2001, we just adopted the state kind of regulations
Right.
for quality residents. And they don't really consider small lots and even their
Yeah.
rule
that's
making
what I was
is there.
curious about.
Because they don't have a way to capture those lots.
Right.
They're leaning on limits of disturbance and their threshold is an acre, so they're always kind of around that area. So when the cities and local programs have more options for permitting, to be able to get into the line, so. But, so the impervious limits, that's pretty much it, except for some language about flow leaving developed sites and things like that. We don't have a lot to hang our hat on, like for infill development, where stormwater flows go and how to get on the site. It's a lot of hand holding, asking right now. It's kind of what we're doing on that. So we're looking to move towards having verified outlets for your stormwater. You mean there's some sort of conveyance, an easement, or some sort of jurisdictional water course.
Okay, last question.
Yeah.
What is a primary stormwater control measure?
Oh, well, I have that in my bulletin slides, because just in case. So, yeah, so in case somebody asks, I was like, I'm gonna leave these in here. Yeah. Primary SCMs just treat a greater amount of nutrients. They're usually larger in size. And you can get the same primary ones from multiple secondaries. And I have a table showing the different ones. To count as one primary, it's a SCM. And your secondary stormwater control measures can be used with primary as kind of like a pretreatment device. And a lot of your secondary, as SCMs, can be used upstream of riparian buffers to kind of slow down stormwater before it's buffered. So what the examples are, your primaries are like your bioretention, your infiltration system, thermal pavement, wet pond, stormwater wetlands, sand filters, or like urban.
Wait, yeah, what's rainwater harvesting? To me, that looks like the lowest hanging fruit in England.
That would be like a large, well,
How big a,
Yeah.
drain pond do you have?
It would be a rainwater that's going to capture the first inch of runoff, so a fairly large rainwater. So it would be something like a, underground cistern and that sort of thing, the rainwater storage station.
Yeah.
And then your secondaries are your green roof, disconnected impervious, level spreaders, with filter strips, swales, or dry ponds. So probably the biggest change from a practice standpoint will be the swales and the dry ponds have been used to just get you to that nutrient buy down level now.
Right, you can see that.
So those going away and not being an option, you're gonna have to go with one of the more intensive SCNs, right, for the term, from a water quality standpoint. Because these also give you the lowest water quality, like reduction right now.
Piggyback on the marriage question, I'm thinking about John Q. Citizen now have to deal with the SNAP tool. Do you foresee an issue with, infill additions to existing single family, small individual property owners trying to deal with this? Was that going to be a problem?
So with the SNAP tool,
Some way to hold their hand and get them through this stuff.
And the state's been doing that a while with the watershed, since you referenced, it's been around. And I'm sure there will be things that need to get tweeted out from the spreadsheet or whatnot.
so like I said, with the smaller site stuff outside the watershed, if your residence subdivision of less than an acre, or if your pre-existing listed a lot, or your first lot less than half an acre, you're still gonna have those impervious, or excuse me, those pond area maximums. And so you won't get into the water quality aspect until you, if you're not doing nitrogen reduction today, you're not gonna be doing actually fast soil limits. So we're still gonna get some of the smaller, John and Jane, citizen owners that we have to walk through some of the stuff on. But right now, we're doing that a lot in the watershed. It's like, there's that any permits that on the watershed, we have to use SNAP tool. Whereas that one should be the case outside of worst level of kids.
Ben, just one clarification, kind of to tie it all together in my mind. So over 24%, they have to use a primary SCM. Right?
Yes.
And that primary SCM has to be one of the ones listed, has to be designed to the standards in the state design guidelines.
Yeah,
Right.
minimum design criteria.
And then that will be calculated using SNAP, the reduction. And so that's what dictates then what has to be met before you can buy down, rather than having a number that's a fixed number before you do the buy down.
Correct.
So there's still a standard there,
Yeah.
right? It's just based on the design guidelines rather than having a target number.
And there will still be offsite mitigation buy downs as well. It's just gonna be after treatment at this point, where you're not gonna be able to get away with not having treatment if you're doing an offsite. 24%.
Which I can buy down from 12.2 to 3.6 or 7.2 to 3.6 after you do your primary.
Yeah. After you do your design, so technically you could be doing a larger buy down, if you're still getting some sort of treatment.
Yeah. That's also what I'm saying.
Depending on what Wayne said, so 25% of the pond area, I gotta use primary. How much do I have to treat that primary before I start buying down? Is there a threshold there?
So you're
Treat all percent of my property and then say I'm done with my primary.
like you're treating all your new built upon areas.
So you have to do
Yeah.
all of your built upon.
Your proposed built upon area. So we can't, because that's something too that we're very black and white about, which we have in there now, but it's not black and white, just will be this, is the state legislation that passed, I think in 2018, that we can't make you treat any existing impervious. So that's crystal clear.
So there's gonna be a lot of people submitting a 24%.
I mean, we'll see, yeah. I mean, the one thing for all you designers out there, the Mark Senior apportioning method is pretty much going away with this now. Yeah, because you're not apportioning anything, because we're not even counting the existing impervious as part of the calculation anymore.
But so understanding this, then you wouldn't need to buy new trim offset credits because you would have to treat it all.
If you treat it all and it gets to 3.6, you still have to hit that 3.6 limit.
Some of those BFDs aren't gonna get you.
Yeah, I mean, you can get like, kind of like now, like, people are treating like for a residential site, they're 12 and they have to treat to get to 6.
Right.
So they'll get to 6 and they'll buy that.
Right.
Well, that same site could be at 12 now and they'll still be treating. They'll still be buying down because unless they want to do multiple SCMs, but it's not required to do multiple
Right.
SCMs to have the offsite mitigation.
Okay.
That's true. So just to go away, so I think I'm somewhat new to this. In the last year, we've gotten floodplain regulations. We've got a stormwater design manual that's going to come out mid next year. And then this process, the state has also handed down rules which we have to comply with. So there are kind of three big movements in your world over the last few years, right? Besides all the statute.
Can you check?
Tiny houses. Cottage courts. Which is a whole different area. Oh, yeah. But this is some of the numbers that we ran, but I didn't clean them up or anything, so this is just both in slides in case I needed it, so. But yeah. That's,
Is this gonna be at like, to this point, is this gonna increase your workload significantly?
I mean, I would say significantly, we're gonna have to get back to Snapchat where we are now. Me specifically, is gonna have to be better at Snapchat than I am now, because I've tried to avoid it as much as I could.
Does it make the review process, though? I mean, is it a little more streamlined, you know, I mean, because there's one tool, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be a little better from that. The one thing that we want to get the tool and kind of get our handle on is that we want to see, because it's a spreadsheet. At the end of the day, it's in the Snap tool, the Excel spreadsheet. But so we just want to figure out what we're going to need from the development community, like off the top of my head, we need their raw spreadsheet, but also a PDF summary of the results. But do we need more than that? Because part of the reporting is going to be, the state currently wants all the Snapchat results with our annual reporting, so we're going to have to find a way to catalog and save that stuff too, so. That's going to be a little work.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know if you're gonna go through and check people's Excel spreadsheet, man, like, it's like, you know, I mean, is there some, I don't know how it's locked.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, and when you're dealing with people that use spreadsheets all the time, like these designers usually do, make sure they're not hacking into the spreadsheet and changing it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Who's been your BQ contact with this?
Trish, your contact?
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's actually the author of this.
Right.
She's
gonna get a lot of questions.
She's leaving, she already gets a lot of questions, but she's over this, model update too, so it's not like some of these separate, which is nice, it's the same person. In charge of model update, it's that often.
Anything else for Ben? All right. Thank you, Ben. Is there any other business? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, Mark, is there a second? Any seconds? All in favor? I'll see you in September.
Solar. Say you got solar.
Just.